shattered dreams, finding hope amid ruins. The pounding beats of Afrobeat music echoed through the muggy night air of Abuja, Nigeria. Vendors yelled out deals on grilled meat and phone cards from their makeshift street stalls, adding to the chaotic vibe of the city. In the dark alleys between neon-lit buildings, shadows danced. One lurked deeper than the rest, almost unseen in the blackness. He was known only as Jide, a silent hunter who snuck through the underbelly of the sprawling city. Crouched in a damp doorway, Jide watched the party on the streets as he waited for his prey. At 40, Jide cut an imposing figure. Broad shoulders and bulging arms strained against his black t-shirt. Frightening tribal tattoos snaked down his neck. But it was his eyes that were most chilling, flat, empty pits that stared out from a scarred face. He looked like harm. Yet when a scrawny teen approached, Jide's mouth spread into a gap-toothed grin. He hugged the boy like a long-lost friend. From his pocket, he pulled out a tiny Ziploc bag filled with white powder. The boy reached for it eagerly, hands shaking. "My best batch yet," Jide bragged. "This will take you higher than the heavens." The teen rushed off with his buy, the promise of short-term bliss replacing the hollowness within. He did not know the sinister truth, that the powder had fentanyl, a potent additive that upped profit and strength at the risk of death. To Jide, his customers were expendable pawns. For years, Jide had ruled this illegal empire, peddling misery disguised as escape. His expertly made drug cocktails offered a quick euphoria, tricking hurt, lonely, and impressionable youth into addiction's hold. Once hooked, they became trapped servants, stuck in an endless loop of use and debt to feed their habit. Jide's business thrived on human suffering. Late at night, when the city settled into an uneasy rest, Jide went back to his den, a rundown warehouse guarded by steel doors and stone-faced sentries. Inside, his crew of mules cut and packaged product beneath harsh fluorescent lights. The huge space echoed with their idle chatter and the buzz of electricity. Jide supervised operations from a torn leather chair on the factory floor, constantly scanning for mistakes. Errors were punished hard. His reputation for brutality kept workers obedient. After business ended, Jide relaxed in the back office, counting stacks of cash by lantern light. A mound of crumpled Naira notes sat beside polished shoes and an AK-47. Jide leaned back, gold chain shining on his chest, pleased at the results of his exploitation. He saw himself as a businessman, giving people what they wanted. If lives collapsed because of him, what did it matter? They knew the risks. But outside the cramped walls of the warehouse, forces were aligning against Jide. Community leaders, drained by the nonstop plague of addiction, pressured law enforcement to step in. Officers now tailed Jide's couriers and tracked shipments. An investigation folder bulged with evidence detailing his huge operation. Whispers swirled that a massive bust was coming soon. Yet Jide brushed off the rumors as exaggerations meant to cause fear, certain of his untouchable status. Hadn't he avoided penalties for decades? Smoozing officials and threatening snitches ensured the police kept away all these years. Jide lit a cigar, defiantly sure the storm too would pass. Until one humid June night, when all hell erupted. The raid began at dusk, just as Jide's lackeys arrived for their shift. Dozens of heavily armed agents swarmed the warehouse, crashing through the barricaded entrance in an armored truck. Mayhem erupted as men shouted and scrambled to get away. But escape was impossible against the siege surrounding the building. Jide abandoned his boldness and made a desperate sprint for the back door. He didn't get far before being tackled by 3 officers, their knees digging into his back. As they cuffed his wrists, Jide roared like a trapped lion, struggling wildly. All his power was gone. He was now just a cornered beast. As he was dragged outside, Jide was greeted by the smug grin of the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency, head running the bust. "Not so untouchable now, huh?" the man mocked. Jide spit at his feet. The agents searched the warehouse, taking bricks of cocaine, heroin bundles, and barrels of fake pills along with ledgers and distribution plans. By sunrise, the once fortified lair had been emptied out. As the news spread, a sense of long-awaited relief rippled through the city's poorest neighborhoods, for years tormented by Jide's exploits. His arrest marked the toppling of an underworld regime that had made money from their pain. Families hugged, comforted by the chance for life free from his grip. Among the celebrators were Ade and his wife, Fatima. While sad to see a man fall, even one as mean as Jide, they could now nurture a fragile hope their only son had a chance at redemption. Tund had been latest victim claimed by Jide's enterprise. Although blessed with a stable childhood, Tund had always been restless, chasing excitement without careful thought. His parents' wise guidance could only hold him back for so long. The temptations of the streets eventually proved too tempting. At 19, Tund was seduced by the city's reckless youth culture. He went to dangerous nightclubs and mixed with questionable crowds. During this rebellion, he was tricked into trying the mind-numbing substances sold by Jide's network. One fateful hit of heroin freed the demon of addiction in Tund. Soon he couldn't handle the agonizing withdrawal without his next fix. He vanished for days on drug-fueled binges, not caring about his frantic parents' pleas for his return. When home, Tund was unpredictable, either manic and animated or lazy and irritable. His moods pivoted sharply depending on access to drugs. He lost interest in old hobbies and friends, completely consumed by chasing euphoria. Though they tried desperately to step in, Jide and Fatima found themselves helpless against Tund's addiction. Their once vibrant son seemed lost, trapped behind an impenetrable wall. When Tund started taking valuables to pay off his debts, it was the final, crushing blow. On the night of Jide's arrest, they found Tund huddled behind the house, confused and trembling from withdrawal. Though just 25, he looked decades older. Fatima cried seeing her son so broken and lost. But she and Jide decided this was the miracle they'd prayed for. With Jide gone, real change was finally possible. That slim hope was worth clinging to. They gently led Tund inside. Though he resisted, fidgety and agitated without drugs, his weakened state left him unable to fight. Jide held his son as Fatima gave sedative pills provided by their local clinic. Eventually Tund's body went limp, his breathing slowed. The sedation offered short-term relief from withdrawal's agony. At sunrise, Jide and Fatima brought the still-asleep Tund to Hope Rehab Center on the outskirts of Abuja. The peaceful campus was nestled in the rugged hills, an escape from the chaos and temptation of the streets. But the cost strained their modest income. Tund's life was priceless. Handing their child into the care of strangers left the aging parents devastated but determined. They put their trust in God and the good intentions of Hope Center's staff. Tund would either beat his demons here or nowhere. With a last tearful kiss to his forehead, they left their son in the hands of fate. As Tund awoke confused in the women's wing across campus, another young victim of Jide's dark web started the road to redemption. Amina stared blankly at sterile white walls, retreating into herself. Though once bright, at 23 years old, Amina barely resembled the hard-working nursing student she'd been just months earlier. Her thin frame hung loosely on her bones. Limp hair fell around her face in oily strands. The youthful glow had drained from her cheekbones. Only her eyes still faintly shone with traces of her dimmed inner light. But her mother, Janet, never lost sight of the radiance lingering under the wreckage of Amina's addiction. She chose to believe the spark could be revived through care and kindness. Janet sat clutching her silent daughter's hand, stroking it gently. Amina had not spoken in days, locked inside herself. Janet didn't push, just gave quiet assurance she was not alone. At night, when Amina thrashed from nightmares, Janet calmed her with lullabies. She helped with basic needs like bathing and feeding with accepting patience. Janet could barely recognize the fragile shell curled up in bed as the bold, hopeful girl who had set off for nursing school just last year. Amina had always had big dreams of saving lives, her empathy and smarts suited for caregiving. She easily earned a coveted scholarship spot despite their family's limited money. Janet was so proud watching her succeed and thrive. But when Amina returned home that summer deeply changed, shame etched on her face, Janet knew some darkness had seeped in and shattered her daughter's spirit. Through tearful confessions, Amina revealed she had been violently attacked by 3 male classmates after a study group. They had drugged and assaulted her, leaving her battered unconscious in a deserted hallway. Amina begged her mother not to report it, sure the prestigious university would protect well-connected young men over a lowly scholarship student. Silence felt safer. Heartbroken, Janet reluctantly agreed, holding her daughter as she wept through the night over stolen dignity. In the weeks that followed, Amina sank into gloomy detachment, barely sleeping or eating. Once lively eyes stared blankly for hours. When she returned to campus, reminders of the trauma were everywhere. She stopped going to classes, failing out within months. Adrift and withdrawn, Amina fell under the control of a man named Musa who promised escape from the pain throbbing inside her. A small sample of heroin had given Amina the first taste of sweet nothingness. Soon Musa was supplying her daily, money vanishing from Janet's rapidly shrinking savings. Now, 2 years later, Janet was completely depleted, financially and emotionally. The needles and burnt foil tucked in Amina's pockets told a story of a habit out of control. Janet needed a lifeline to pull her only daughter back from the brink of ruin. Through a longtime friend, Janet got Amina a spot at Hope Center, well known for its holistic addiction treatment. She agonized over the cost but was heartened to see a tiny spark of life returning to Amina's eyes when she mentioned getting help. It was enough. Janet scraped together the down payment by selling their family car. On intake day, she dressed Amina in a pretty purple head wrap, hoping to revive her pride, if only for a moment. Janet prayed this chance would sustain her faith that redemption was possible, even from the darkest places. With a final desperate hug, she left her daughter in God's hands. In the early days at Hope Center, Tund and Amina struggled to withstand the harsh realities of detox. Not allowed to leave campus, their bodies rebelled violently against forced sobriety. Miserable and irritable, they isolated themselves, rejecting unity with fellow residents. Only after the agonizing withdrawal passed could real therapy start. As their minds cleared, Tund and Amina cautiously began exploring the peaceful grounds. Lush gardens, fresh meals, yoga, this new world confused them. They stayed wary, expecting cruelty, but found only kindness. Their counselor Dauda, a former addict himself, quickly earned their trust. His calm manner and caring listening steadied their changeable emotions. He introduced them to other patients whose friendship eased their loneliness. In group art therapy, their long-hid creativity began resurfacing. Tund rediscovered joy in songwriting and playing his beloved guitar, sold long ago to buy drugs. Strumming familiar tunes transported him to happier days. Amina poured her pent-up pain into painting bold, colorful canvases, creating filled an emotional void. As the weeks passed, the counseling slowly unearthed the root causes feeding their addiction. The carefree boy who turned to drugs out of youthful boredom realized he was escaping the heavy expectations of adulthood. Behind Amina's wall of silence lay an ocean of unprocessed trauma. She traced her decline back to those men stealing her agency. Their breakfast talks shifted from surface complaints to sharing dreams and vulnerabilities. A sense of community grew strong. They celebrated small daily wins like resisting cravings. And slowly, the pieces of their fragmented selves fused back together. Behind their eyes, a spark of hope reignited. On the 90th day, Tund passed a big milestone, writing a letter of apology to those he had hurt. Tenderness flowed from his pen as he thanked his parents for their stubborn love and promised to rebuild trust. Across campus, Amina painted her mother's portrait from memory, honoring her unyielding loyalty. That night, for the first time in months, they both slept soundly, unbothered by the ghosts of their pasts. As Tund and Amina found stability and recovery, the world outside also changed in their absence. The power vacuum left by Jide's arrest stirred up the criminal underworld. Rival dealers fiercely sought control of his turf. Mayhem ruled the streets as gang violence erupted. Within the black markets and hidden corners, familiar toxins still flowed, swallowed up by the desperate and wild. But the loss of Jide's iron grip let fresh air and light filter in. Declining neighborhoods sensed a chance for rebirth. At dusk 6 months into treatment, Jide and Fatima returned to Hope Center to reunite with the son they had given up. As they hugged Tund, marveling at the clarity in his eyes, the last of their worries lifted. Here stood their beloved source of joy. Tund was restored. The very next day, Janet arrived to take Amina home, her healing clear in her skin. During the long bus ride, Amina drifted in and out of sleep, resting her head on Janet's shoulder. Together they dreamed of mending their battered but unbroken bond. A once-lost future now glimmered ahead. In the months after returning home, Tund and Amina leaned on one another for support against temptations. They became partners navigating the outside world, so unfamiliar after isolation at Hope Center. It comforted them to know someone understood this strange feeling of restarting life anew. On days when cravings roared, they repeated Dauda's motto, "This too shall pass." In moments of doubt, they gave encouragement and reminded each other of the promise ahead. Their friendship held strong. And slowly, the pieces of the lives they had shed returned bit by bit. Tund went back to work at his uncle's tailor shop, welcoming structure. Amina enrolled in night classes, determined to revive her dream of helping others. After 2 years of tireless focus, Amina finally earned her nursing degree. At her graduation, Janet and Tund cheered loudly as she crossed the stage, overflowing with pride. The world narrowed down to this moment of shared joy, the pain that had brought them here, now in the past. At the party that night, Jide raised a toast to the room. From darkness, you both found light. Remember, brighter days always lie ahead. The promise of redemption had flickered in Amina and Tund's hearts even in the bleakest moments of addiction. Now, sipping sweet wine and wrapped in love, they finally saw its full glow. though the future held sure challenges, they would cling to this beacon shining bright within, guiding them through life's storms. Their tangled paths had met in darkness, but now they walked forward together toward the light.